With just 1 week until President-elect Trump is sworn into office, we want to focus on his day one plans to tackle a top priority, immigration and border security. I'm losing my earpiece here. By the way, in a private meeting with Republican senators last week, Trump and his team said he planned to issue an estimated 100 executive orders on his first day in office, including making it much harder to cross the southern border. Multiple sources told Axios that the president-elect will likely try to reinstate Title 42, the pandemic-era border restriction that allows the U.S. to expel migrants before they could seek asylum, citing concerns over the spread of disease. President Biden ended that policy in 2023 after the pandemic had been declared officially over. Now, if the incoming Trump administration wants to reinstate Title 42, they'll need a public health emergency to do it. And according to the New York Times, Trump's advisors have spent recent months trying to find the right disease to build their case. Other potential executive orders could target finishing the border wall, setting up new immigration detention facilities, even ending birthright citizenship in the U.S. And of course, Trump has promised the largest deportation operation in U.S. history. Back in November, we asked John Sandwig, who was once acting director of ICE during President Obama's second term, what that could look like in practice. Take a listen.
A very large percentage of them are in these mixed status families. That means they have a U.S. citizen spouse, they have a U.S. citizen child. There is no way to do this without, separating those families or putting them into a situation where the U.S. citizen children need to leave the country with their parents.
Okay, so of the proposals on the table, which ones are feasible, which are practical? Are there other ways to address the flaws in America's immigration system, flaws that everyone admits are there? Joining us now is Laura Collins. She's an immigration policy expert with the George W. Bush Institute. Laura, thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate it. I read through the memo here on what to do, what's next, policy recommendations from the Institute. And you say there needs to be a top-down overhaul, but that overall, the presence of immigrants is good for the economy. A lot of people would dispute that. So walk us through your thinking and then what you think should be done policy-wise.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for having me. At the Bush Institute, we really believe that America benefits from immigration, but that we need a modern system that really ensures our future prosperity, vitality, and security. We know immigrants come here to work. We know they contribute. We know they pay taxes. And we know they're an important part of our cultural fabric. And so one of the things that really stood out to me in the last election was everyone talked so much about enforcement. Everyone talked so much about the border. No one was really talking about the things that we need to do to ensure our future prosperity as a country. And so there needs to be a bigger conversation beyond enforcement that really takes into account the economic contributions that we know immigrants make and really fixing that legal immigration system to make sure we have the workers we need for the future.
And so, Laura, what are your recommendations to do just that? Because administrations have been trying to fix this issue for decades and decades, but what do you think can be done?
Well, I think we really need to start with that legal immigration system. We really need more workers, and we can do that in a couple of different ways. We can increase the number of people we bring here on employment-based green cards. Right now, most of the people we bring here on family-based visas, those people do still work, but it doesn't mean that their skills and their abilities necessarily line up with the openings that we have in the labor market. We also can do some things to increase the caps on temporary worker visas. That would be both people on the higher education levels and the lower education levels. We know that we need workers at all parts of our economy, and these are people who can come in and fill an open job right now. It's not just about immigration. Obviously, there's other ways that we can have a pro-growth agenda, but immigration is one of those pieces that can help us in the short and medium terms.
So I think everybody agrees in the long term that immigration is good for the economy. It's more people paying taxes, more people spending money, more people with jobs. In the short term, though, there can be some slippage. The Congressional Budget Office looked at wage growth, says it will be a little bit slower for people without a college degree in the years ahead because of immigration. So what would you say to people who hear you and are worried, okay, I love your long term, fine, but I'm here in the short term and I'm worried?
We have a lot of open jobs right now, millions of open jobs. And so I know people get very concerned when we talk about immigration and that labor market. And it's not a fixed pie, right? Immigrants also come in and they bring in demand for other services and other goods because they're consumers just like we are. So it's really about thinking about it holistically as a growth strategy. We also know that, that report does state that there is a little bit of a slowdown in wage growth, but most of the time, recent immigrants are actually hurting the most recent before them immigrants in terms of wages. It really is a very nominal amount. And so if you are a native-born American worker and you're very concerned, I think that's understandable. But if Congress in particular goes out and decides to design an immigration policy that actually works to benefit America and grows America, then I think that we can mitigate some of those negative effects.
So, Laura, one of incoming President Trump's biggest campaign issues that got a lot of support from his supporters is his promise for this mass deportation. You call this short-sighted. Tell us why, and explain to us what you think are the pitfalls here.
Mass deportation, potentially deporting up to 11 million people, is nearly impossible. It'd be incredibly expensive. It would take probably 10 to 20 years, depending on how fast they want to do it. It would pull people who are already working out of the labor force, and it wouldn't do anything to replace them. And we know we need those workers. And so it's not really fiscally and economically sound to decide that we're just going to deport 11 million people if we don't also have a program in place, legal changes, any sort of plan to replace those workers. And so it's okay to talk about enforcement. I think it's an important part of our immigration policy, but it's not the whole picture if you're not also thinking about how we make sure we have full employment in the United States. And that includes having some of these people who are already here working remain in work, or replacing them with other legal workers.
All right, Laura Collins of the George W. Bush Institute, an immigration expert. Thank you very much for walking us through this.
Thank you.